Hello, my friends. It's a great privilege for me to have Dr. Avi Loeb as a special guest today. Um, I have spoken to Avi many times. Dr. Loeb is the Frank B. Baird Jr. Professor of Science, Director, Institute for Theory and Computation at Harvard University. And he is uh, very interested in exploring life beyond our planet and even beyond our solar system. So recently we had an amazing conference at Harvard about uh, these matters, including, what is fundamental reality, the hard problem of consciousness, whether there is life on other planets, are we alone? And we'll be releasing some of those videos. Avi, I'll be sharing them with you as well. But before we start, can we say you're an astrobiologist as well?
Yes, although I'm not particularly attached to biology because we are now on the cusp of developing artificial intelligence, and who knows, the sky's the limit as to how much our intelligence can improve compared to what biology provided us with. And in that sense, I'm really more curious to know about smarter students in our class of intelligence.
Yeah, I, coming from Eastern spiritual backgrounds, intelligence is not the same thing as consciousness. So, right now, with AI, as you know, actually, I have a book on AI that's right now on many bestseller lists. It's called Digital Dharma. And I've been talking to Sam Altman. In fact, I'm going to Silicon Valley. And, I think artificial intelligence at its current stage is just a large language model that accesses the huge database of human exploration. It's not intelligent or aware in the sense we think of intelligence. So that's a whole nother topic, the hard problem of consciousness, which I'm obsessed with, and we can at some point talk about it.
I mean, there is also the following, that a lot of people are worried about artificial intelligence as an existential risk, and I'm not that worried because I had two daughters, and I think people who are worried are probably not very good parents. When you deal with intelligent systems, you cannot really control them. You cannot be a helicopter parent, and you cannot hold them with a leash. You have to train them on the guiding principles that you find appropriate. And that's what we did with our daughters. We educated them, and we hope that they will follow these guidelines in the future, but you can't really be sure. And that's the nature of intelligence. You have to um, allow those systems to get their feedback from reality and follow your guiding principles if they find it appropriate. And we are, for the first time, in a situation where, aside from making biological kids, we have technological kids that might become intelligent. And as you say, it's really early days because those systems were trained on text and content from the internet. So they're basically trying to imitate that. And there is a lot of discussion about aligning those systems to follow our guiding principles. Since they're made of silicon and not flesh and blood, they're really alien intelligence. I call AI alien intelligence in the sense that it's not the same as ours. Our brain consumes 12 watts. These systems consume gigawatts of power just to do similar tasks. And moreover, they're made of silicon. It's really a very different beast that we are dealing with. And when we try to control them and train them the way we think. It's just like putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking what distinguishes Homo sapiens from all other species, including previous hominids like Neanderthals, etc. Number one, we have a language for creating models and stories. You know, the other species only have a language for mating calls and food calls and danger calls. And number two, we are tool makers. I mean, we have this opposable thumb. We started with Stone Age tools. Then we had, you know, Iron Age tools. Then we created fire or discovered fire. If we hadn't discovered fire, we wouldn't have the steam engine, we wouldn't have the industrial revolution. And so human beings are essentially tool makers and storytellers, and that'll never stop. So either we adopt to the new technologies or we become extinct. It's a Darwinian principle that this evolution of technology is not going to stop.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is the AI systems of today do not have a body. So they do not interact with the physical reality the way our body interacts. And that's a big deficiency. I mean, we do have robots that can be connected to AI, but they are still very primitive compared to the tasks that the humans are doing with their bodies. The other thing, of course, is that developing these AI systems, allows us to make them similar to neural networks that nature produced. That's the brain that we have. But the number of connections they have is much less than, by a factor of 100 to 1,000, less than the number of synapses in the human brain as of now. The fundamental question is, if we ever get to build an AI system that has as many connections as the human brain, will it be as complex, unpredictable? Will it exhibit what we call free will, in the sense that we can't really forecast the way humans make decisions and behave and decide things? I think it's possible that it's all a matter of complexity. The brain of the fruit fly was mapped recently. There were several scientific papers that appeared that show a full map of the fruit fly. And given that map of the connections in the brain of the fruit fly, it was possible to make a theoretical model, a computer simulation of the way the fruit fly thinks and makes decisions and responds to the environment. And you might ask, is it the same possible if we built an AI system with the same number of connections to the human brain? Now, the limitation for the human brain is actually power. The brain is using 20% of the amount of energy that the metabolism of the human body is processing, and you cannot grow the brain bigger than that physically. In the case of AI, we might reach a similar power constraint, because if we wanted to extend the current systems, just increase their size, the number of neural connections they have, when we get to the same number as the human brain has, we will need to consume 10 times the electric power currently in use on Earth, the global electric power. So again, power limit is what might set the capabilities of future AI systems.
It's interesting because it took us 13.8 billion years to get here. And this thing, which is 3 pounds, can unravel the mysteries of the universe, even notwithstanding 20% of oxygen consumption. It's still, the power of a light bulb at the most.
Right. And it just, for me, it brings a sense of awe and admiration for nature, because nature clearly is far more innovative and imaginative than humans. For us to build the same thing as nature does for free takes a lot of effort. And the same is true of nuclear fusion. We were able to shine lasers on a tiny pellet in Livermore and recreate the conditions at the center of the sun of fusion. And the sun is huge and just held together by gravity, and has been doing it for billions of years. And we are proud of what we accomplished, but I think a sense of modesty is needed, because if you drive a car and it has an accident, it doesn't repair itself. The human body can repair itself. That's amazing. Just think about reproducing our body the way we do, and repairing damage, and also having the capabilities of the human brain. I mean, we clearly are, we're just at the beginning of understanding how remarkable nature is.
I have a digital twin now that has basically absorbed all of my 95 books. I've been answering questions for 30 years. I do these videos, they all go into my digital twin. And I have actually founded a company in India called Cyberhuman and would love to offer creating a digital twin with all your knowledge and your curiosity if you're interested.
Well, it's interesting to have those twins. I do have one. It was produced by a company in the US. And I wonder if we put them together on a podcast, will they be as interesting as our conversation?
I would think we should try it. Anyway, let's get to our topic today because after the conference, I was very curious about your fascination for extraterrestrials. Why is the search for extraterrestrials so important for the future of humanity, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it's a way for us to grow. If you think about the way we behave, if you open, the news on a daily basis, you realize that, we are basically spending $2.4 trillion a year on military budgets, finding ways to kill other people or protect ourselves from others killing us, which is a huge waste of our resources. And it's not that the intelligent thing to do. The intelligent thing to do is actually work together for the prosperity of everyone. There is enough for everyone given the modern technology and science. I'm not saying there was enough in the jungle 50,000 years ago when we were on trees, but by now science and technology can basically feed and support everyone on Earth. And the fact that we are not using it for that purpose, that we are still in the mindset of limited resources and we fight over territories, all of that makes very little sense, because the Earth itself is just a small rock left over from the formation of the sun. And if you look at the universe at large, there is much more real estate out there. So, there is one approach to fixing human behavior, and that is the one that John Lennon took from the Beatles. He wrote a song that says, "Imagine all the people living in peace." And I'm not as naive as John Lennon. I don't think singing that song will change the behavior of politicians. There is no way. People will continue to fight over territories, over resources. I think shock therapy is very much in place, in order. We need something that will change our mindset, perspective. And there is nothing better than having a visitor that came from another star and gives us a new perspective, especially if that visitor represents technologies that we never possessed, some insights into science that we never imagined. Think of it as allowing people to realize that there is a smarter kid on the block. And if you look at religions over the centuries or millennia, they were all about having a superhuman entity that we should be at awe with, and that was God. And Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher, said God is dead, in the 19th century. And after that, the modern era of science and technology gave humans hubris. We started to believe that we are very powerful. We don't need God. Most people, many people are secular. And the science is supposed to replace. We don't need to rely on a superhuman entity. But I think that is the lack of modesty that comes with that is just wrong, because there may well be someone more powerful than we are, and that would be a neighbor, and if we find that neighbor that managed to create things in the laboratory that we never imagined, including perhaps even creating a baby universe, because that's a sign of understanding the initial conditions of our universe. So if you have a recipe for how to start a universe because you understand how to unify quantum mechanics and gravity, you might as well try to design those conditions in the laboratory, like baking a cake. You will create a universe. And that is the quality that is required to apply for the job of God. If you were to ask, let's advertise that job and ask who can apply, it would be, I mean, the first requirement is whoever can create a universe. And now we can imagine understanding the initial conditions of the universe, having a recipe for that, and a very advanced scientific civilization might be able to create a baby universe. So all I'm saying is we can replace the traditional interpretation of what it means to be a superhuman entity like God with something real in our universe that we will discover. And that will give us a sense of humility and will change the future of humanity. Instead of us, being arrogant and fighting with each other on nonsense, we would realize there is a better way of us doing much better than we did in the past. And so that, I think, is the shock therapy that we need.
So, you say, you raise a lot of points. So you said we left the jungle 50,000 years ago, and here we are exploring life on other planets. That's a huge leap in creativity and self-understanding and, the mystery of our existence. Freeman Dyson, who I communicated with before he passed, was a very interesting scientist at Princeton. And I asked him once, what is God? And he says, God is what mind becomes when it passes the threshold of our comprehension. And I think that's a very good definition for,
Well, so the question is, what will happen if AI does that?
yeah, but
Will it be an oracle that we regard as superhuman? So I think of AI as either artificial intelligence or as alien intelligence. And, we might discover aliens that are more intelligent than we are.
yeah, but Avi, whatever unless we solve the hard problem of consciousness, which is based on the ontological understanding that matter is the starting point for everything, then we can't explain subjectivity. I mean, my AI twin doesn't feel hunger or have a headache or sexual desire or the fear of death. And yet, the hallmark of our existence is subjectivity. So I think I don't know if we can go there.
Well, it really depends how well medicine will be in the future, because you can imagine gaining immortality at some point, just like our ability to repair a car. A car that is damaged can be repaired. You can replace parts and it will still be a car. And so the human body has currently, it's suffering from all kinds of damages throughout our lifespan, and we don't fix those. And once we realize we understand how the human body works, I can imagine a future where humans would live much longer.
Yeah, I can imagine that, but the human body is still an experience in consciousness. It's still, to say that there's a biological basis of consciousness assumes that biology produces consciousness and is not an experience in consciousness. That's a whole different. Um,
No, I mean, so in that context, the question is, can we connect a thinking machine, which let's say the AI will become, can we connect it to the real world through a set of sensors in a way that would resemble the human body? And that would be the next step, of course. First, we develop a machine that can think like humans because it has enough connections, a general intelligence machine. And then after that, we connect it to a set of sensors, and that will give it an experience with the physical world. And So it's really an extrapolation, but the question is, once you do that, will it resemble the way we behave? Now think about Stephen Hawking. Okay, he visited my home in 2016 in his last visit to the US, and he was completely unable to move muscles in his body except for his cheekbones, like very little. And so nevertheless, he behaved like a human. He said one evening, he said, I'm bored, let's have some fun, go to the bar of the hotel. He had affairs with his caretaker, actually, a few years before that. And so he behaved like a human. There was nothing that you could think about the human desires, wishes, behavior that he did not display. But he could not move a muscle in his body. So I regard that as the Hawking limit, where the body is unable to function. But what makes us human is still in his brain. And why is that different? The Hawking limit, why is that different from an AI system that has enough connections and behaves like the human brain? I don't see that.
It's a whole different conversation. That's why I think we can have a series of discussions on it, and we can come back to it because I have strong feelings about the nature of consciousness being borderless and formless and non-physical and non-local and irreducible and fundamental. And it's not the same thing as mind or body or anything like that. But that's another conversation. I don't want to today's conversation is about this fascination for extraterrestrial life. And so I want to get to my second question. We'll come back to these issues sometime, I hope. How is the search for physical objects near Earth different from search for electromagnetic or radio signals? Because until now, that's what we've been exploring with the, background cosmic wave radiation, etc.
Right. So the way we behave is we imagine something like us, which, if you go on a date, it sounds natural to look at the mirror and imagine that you'll meet a partner that looks like you. Now, for an actual date with humans, that's a good assumption. But when you are dealing with someone from another star, it's not necessarily a good assumption. And so what we did is, as we developed technologies on Earth, we imagined aliens using them. So when we developed radio technologies for communication, we imagined there might be a radio signal. But by now, for example, we're not using radio as much as we used a century ago. Nevertheless, for more than 70 years, there was a search for radio signals, and it didn't give any positive result. And if you think about it, it's just like waiting for a phone call at home. If you are lonely and you wish to meet someone and you're just waiting for that someone to call you, and the call may never come because it may have been made before you were listening. In our case, humans came to exist only in the past few million years, and maybe there was a call a billion years ago, but nobody was around to listen. These signals are propagating at the speed of light. Then if you don't listen at the right time, they're now at the edge of the universe and they're not near you. So, and of course, there is a better way, and that is searching for physical objects that may be in your mailbox or in your backyard, because those are not running out of your yard. I mean, all the probes that we launched to interstellar space, like Voyager, Pioneer, New Horizons, they are moving at a speed that is 10 times slower than necessary to escape from the Milky Way galaxy. They are bound by gravity to the Milky Way. So they keep accumulating over time, just like plastics in the ocean. And we could find them. So we need to look in our backyard and see if there are any interstellar objects that came from other stars that may be technological in origin. And this approach was not taken. So that's the one I'm advocating for. And I think it makes more sense. And actually, only over the past decade, astronomers discovered the first objects from outside the solar system. There was a meteor in 2014 that the US government satellites detected. and I went for an expedition to the Pacific Ocean to retrieve materials from that meteor. We're planning to do another expedition in a year, in summer 2025, if we get funded. It will cost $6.5 million. We will look for bigger pieces in the wreckage of that meteor to figure out whether it was natural or artificial and what was the origin of that object, because it was moving very fast, faster than 95% of the stars near the sun, and was also of very tough material because it maintained its integrity all the way down to the lower atmosphere. And then in addition to that meteor, there was another object discovered in 2017 called Oumuamua, which did not collide with Earth, but was very weird. It was most likely flat in its shape and was pushed away from the sun by some mysterious force without evaporating, without showing any cometary tail. And so I say, you know, these interstellar objects that we just found look unusual, and we should find more and figure out if any of them are technological. And this is a new approach, was never tried before, and I find it exciting. In addition, the US government talks about objects that they cannot figure out, and there will be hopefully a hearing in the US Congress within a month or so on that.
So before I get to my next question, just out of curiosity, any radio signal that we see or anything we experience has to be from the past, right? So we only experience the past.
Exactly. That's because of the speed of light, delaying the arrival of things. Yeah, there is not, well, it's possible in principle to imagine something coming from the future if there was a time machine. Now, in order to make a time machine, one way to make it is if we had access to material that has negative mass. You know, we are all familiar with everything being positive, made of positive mass, and that creates attractive gravity. We are pulled towards the Earth. But in principle, just like in electromagnetism, you can imagine negative masses that will create repulsive gravity, just like negative charges create an opposite force, and in electricity. So the question is that possible? And the answer is, as far as we know, there is no negative mass, except the mass of the vacuum itself. If you remove all matter, the vacuum itself happens to have some mass per unit volume. And that is creating the accelerated expansion of the universe. We see that the universe is not only expanding, but its expansion rate is speeding up over time, recently, in recent history. And that means that there is repulsive gravity of the vacuum. But we don't know how to excavate this so-called dark energy. We don't know how to put it in a vessel and then create an object of negative mass. If we were able to do that, one can show that we could create a time machine because you would be able to, instead of moving towards the future, you could go to the past and visit your ancestors. And, you know, one argument, I mean, if we meet aliens that are able to travel across space faster than light, you know, the one way for them to do that is to go through a wormhole. And that again requires negative mass. And if we find them...
So these are huge conundrums right now because the cosmological constant, which, as you know, Einstein described, the measured value and the theoretical value are so far apart that we actually have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, we don't know what is the nature of dark energy exactly for the reason you mentioned, because if we were to guess it, it would have been much denser by 121 orders of magnitude. It's the biggest puzzle in fundamental physics. But nevertheless, we know it exists from measurements of the expansion rate of the universe. We see that it's accelerating. But we don't know of a way of bottling, putting it in a bottle and making negative mass object that would allow us, in principle, to build a wormhole or a time machine. And in fact, Stephen Hawking argued that perhaps the laws of physics prevent a time machine. I mean, if we had the access to aliens that were able to allow us to go back in time, the one thing I would immediately do, I mean, there are two things we can do with it. One is go back in time. Second is travel to very distant locations faster than light, because you can build a wormhole that connects two regions in a sort of a throat that allows you much faster travel. But the question is which is a higher priority? And for me, it's actually going back in time, because uh, almost all of my father's family was killed in concentration camps during the Holocaust. And one solution to that would be to go back in time to bring them back to life, is to go back in time and kill Adolf Hitler. He was responsible for the killing of 6 million Jews. And if you were able to go back in time, you could prevent that fate. So that
Again, going that also, as you know, raises the whole paradox called the grandfather's paradox.
Yes, that's why most physicists believe that it's not possible to have a time. We haven't seen evidence for it.
Unless there are multiple histories of the universe, and in one history he was killed, and in the other history he was not killed.
So, it's just like watching different versions of a movie. And unfortunately, the one that I witness is not very enjoyable. There are lots of atrocities that humans did throughout human history, and I would much rather see a better version. So either by going back in time or by going to space, just escaping all the humans. That's a very good. So the second option is to simply go to some destination, but I just don't know which destination is most attractive, because there is no.
Coming back to my question, does quantum mechanics allow for multiple histories?
In principle, it may be allowable in a quantum theory of gravity, which we don't have. So we don't have a unified theory of gravity and quantum mechanics, two of the pillars of modern physics. And therefore, I cannot tell you. If we had such a theory, I would be able not only to tell you that, but it may be that such a theory simply forbids going back in time. Not only that, but I could tell you what started the Big Bang, what was there before our universe, which we don't know because we don't have that theory. I could tell you what happens inside a black hole. We can't say anything because Einstein's theory breaks down in the singularity of a black hole, and we know why. It's because it doesn't incorporate quantum mechanics. So we are limited. That's why I really want to meet a higher intelligence. Maybe they know the answers to these questions. It would feel like cheating in an exam where you get the answer from someone else, but I would rather know the answer than remain ignorant.
What is the Galileo project?
So in trying to address the question of whether there are physical objects that came from advanced technological civilizations elsewhere, I established the Galileo Project. We are searching for objects near Earth that might be of extraterrestrial technological origin. And we built one observatory at Harvard University, monitoring the entire sky all the time. And we have the first paper summarizing the early results after monitoring almost 1 million objects that we are about to release in the coming weeks. And then we are building 2 additional observatories in other locations. So we are basically looking at the entire sky and checking if there are any anomalous objects that are not familiar. They are not birds, they are not drones, balloons, airplanes, not things that we know about, not satellites. And then the next question is, okay, if they are not familiar, are they of technological origin, and were they manufactured by a non-human civilization? And so these are the questions, and hopefully within the coming years, we'll have some interesting evidence. There are some claims that the US government, simply because it invests 1/3 of the world expenditure in military budgets, it has information about materials or objects that move in very anomalous ways that indicates that they may not be human-made. I haven't seen that evidence. I haven't seen any materials or data, but if the US government has it, they should share it with scientists like myself, because their day job is national security. My day job is to figure out what lies outside the solar system. And the two things are mutually exclusive. I mean, anything that comes from outside the solar system is not a matter of national security.
What are the exciting developments that you expect in the next few months or years?
So I hope that we will retrieve bigger pieces from this interstellar meteor that came a decade ago and collided with Earth, and we will know whether it was technological, just like the Tesla Roadster car that Elon Musk launched in 2018, and it will collide with Earth in 20 million years. So the question is there an entrepreneur more accomplished than Elon Musk may have sent an interstellar car that we might find, or it may be a rock from another star, and then we will learn about the backyard of that star. And so either way, we will learn something new. And then with the Galileo project, my hope is that we will discover some anomalous objects in our observatories, and they would behave in ways that cannot be reproduced by human-made technologies. But if we don't, so be it. That's the nature of scientific inquiry. You're not supposed to assume what you would find. There are many people who have opinions on this matter of whether we are alone or not, but they're not seeking the evidence. And the only way for us to learn something new is by seeking the evidence. And we better invest money and time in trying to find the evidence. We invested billions of dollars in looking for the dark matter. That's most of the matter in the universe that is invisible. We don't know what it is, and we haven't found it. And I say we should invest billions of dollars in the search for cosmic neighbors, because that's a question that will have an even bigger impact on the future of humanity. And people often quote Enrico Fermi, who said, "Where is everybody?" back 70 years ago. And that is a question that every lonely person asks. And what you tell a lonely person is, you need to be proactive. You can't imagine that you are that attractive that whenever you ask the question, someone will be next to you. You have to look through your windows or go to dating sites to find someone.
Are you optimistic about finding a cosmic partner?
Yeah, I'm optimistic simply because I think if you're not seeking evidence, if you're not searching to answer such a question, obviously we'll not find anything, and we are just doing the right thing now. And I think we are not that special. I think that we probably represent sort of the typical student in the class of intelligent civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. So there might have been other civilizations far more advanced than we are, and we just need to look. And it may not be easy, because the effect of technology on Earth so far are very subtle. If you were to zoom on Earth, the cleanest technological signature is to see those rockets flying out of the Earth. That is something that nature doesn't do. Nature has rocks falling on Earth, impacting Earth and kicking things out, but it doesn't have rockets coming out of the Earth. The other thing is, of course, city lights. You would notice, but it's not a lot of power, actually, compared to the sunlight that is impinging on Earth. And there are, of course, electromagnetic signals as well, but they're very weak. And I think, as technologies evolve, we would have less of an imprint that can easily be recognized from a large distance. So we just need to focus our funds and time and search for those subtle technological signatures. And there might be a lot of space trash, around us that was produced by other civilizations, and that would be our treasure if we find it.
So before we end, I'd like to summarize and I'm not a scientist like you are. My training is mostly in neuroendocrinology and other subjects, and then I digressed, went all the way into trying to understand consciousness. as fundamental. But as I look at the current landscape that we call the universe, we really don't know what dark energy is. We don't know what dark matter is. We do not have any idea what caused the Big Bang. At the Planck level, all the laws of physics fall apart. There is this precise thing called cosmic inflation, where the universe tripled a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth in a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillion second, moving from a dot to the size of a grapefruit and then slowed down. Why this precision? And then there are other people, I forget his name now, talking about eternal inflation, which says that, basically there might be infinite universes and infinite dimensions of
That's Andre Linde from
Andre Linde, yeah.
I mean, all of these are speculations, I would say, and they, even though they represent the mainstream, it was the mainstream to think that the Earth is at the center of the universe, after Aristotle for 1,000 years. So we should not take that too seriously. I mean, the beauty of science is that you let nature guide us rather than, I mean, nobody expected quantum mechanics. Einstein was very troubled by quantum mechanics when it was discovered experimentally because he couldn't figure it out. We still are unable to interpret it correctly. So what I'm saying is nature is more imaginative than we are. And therefore, we should let experiments guide us. Unfortunately, many scientists, do science as a way of showing off, showing that they are smart, and arguing that we understand so much that anything that the experiments will provide us with can already be figured out in advance, or they do intellectual gymnastics on things that will not be tested during their lifetime. And I think that's the wrong way of doing science. What you should always pursue are questions that you can address during your lifetime by retrieving evidence, finding clues that will guide us. It's just like a detective story. You don't know, you make mistakes along the way. It's not about our ego. It's about learning and growing as a result of that. So if you may ask, why is it that not so many breakthroughs, fundamental breakthroughs, were made over the past decade or two in physics? They were much more prominent in the early days of physics. Part of it is that the motivation of the people pursuing the world is different and not as much out of the box thinking is encouraged. There are these big tribes that are used to discussing a subject in one way. If you deviate from it, then you don't get funded. You can't really pursue it, and that's not that's not the way that innovation will come forward and blossom. And the physics Nobel Prize this year was given to people from Google, that not from a university. And the same was in chemistry, and it was related to AI. And I think in innovation can be far more prosperous in academia than it is right now.
So here's my conundrum, right? And I have to say this with true honesty, given all the issues with modern cosmology, quantum mechanics, and cosmic inflation, eternal inflation, all of that. And now the information that there might be 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, maybe uncountable trillions of planets, maybe 60 billion habitable planets just in the Milky Way galaxy. Given all that, here we are on a speck of dust, which is not even the equivalent of one grain of sand in all the beaches and all the deserts of this world. And on this planet, you have a species called Homo sapiens that evolved only 200,000 years ago, that took a evolutionary leap with the cognitive revolution 40,000 years ago, that created this technology that is really the latest technology, is only a few decades old. How come this species has the hubris to think it can solve the mystery of the universe? Uh, it just seems totally arrogant to me.
I completely agree. And I think we will get a sense of modesty if we find another species that did much better. And uh, seeking a superhuman entity, I think, is key for our future survival. And that's a theme of past religions, but it could be also a theme of science. And the problem is you find some people speculating about the multiverse, as you mentioned, and the fact that everything possible will happen an infinite number of times, although we don't have access to that. And all of these are metaphysical ideas that we have no clue whether they are correct or not, but you will find theoretical physicists attached to them, people that do string theory, attached to them because it allows them to do intellectual gymnastics. But that's not the way to learn something new about the world that we live in. It could be a virtual reality, and virtual realities are very addictive because you feel better in a virtual reality compared to the frustrating reality that we all share, because you're not constrained as much by the facts when you live in that's why a lot of people get high on drugs or put the goggles on their head and live in the metaverse. And nowadays it's fashionable to live in virtual realities in theoretical physics. And all I'm saying is we live for such a short time. Let's make the best out of it. As a learning experience, let's try to learn about things we've never imagined that go beyond humans. And one way to find them is by searching for neighbors in our cosmic neighborhood.
By the way, my personal bias is that we are in a virtual reality. That's very consistent with some of the ancient wisdom traditions of the East. It's called Maya, which means a projection on a more fundamental, uh, acausal, non-local reality, which is projecting what we call the physical universe as a virtual experience.
Well, that's very interesting, and that's a subject for another discussion between us. I mean, it goes back to Plato's allegory of the cave, where what is being seen by the prisoners is not really, I mean, it's just projected on the wall.
What's my last question? Why is mathematics? What is mathematics if not a metaphysical?
Oh yeah. No, mathematics is metaphysical, but physics is supposed to describe the one reality that we all share. Okay, and that means that there could have been many different realities that are not being realized. And for example, you can imagine that you have $1 trillion in your bank account. That's a virtual reality, but there is only a specific amount of money in your bank account, and that is the reality that we all share, and that's the only reality that you can use to pay bills, and so the idea behind physics is to narrow down the range of possibilities that are realized in the physical reality, and not allow everything that our imagination comes with. But imagination is necessary because very often you are used to the experiences you had, and imagination allows you to think about things that you might be missing. The unknown unknowns, things that you've never thought about and might be beyond the horizon. And that will motivate us to look for them.
We have no idea how consciousness imagines. We can see the neural correlates. We have no idea what imagination is.
True. And that's what makes life worth living, that you can't expect it ahead of time.
So that's been a very good, wonderful conversation. I'm sure people will have multiple reactions to it. Before I let you go, where did you grow up?
I grew up on a farm, collected eggs every afternoon, and I used to drive a tractor to the hills of the farm, the village, where I would read philosophy books. And I grew up in Israel. And I arrived at physics and astrophysics by chance. It's just circumstances that brought me to that. But then I realized, even though it was an arranged marriage, I'm actually married to my true love because I can address philosophical questions using the scientific method.
Wonderful conversation, Avi. More to come, and very grateful that you could join me for this hour.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure.